So welcome to another War Game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're talking about, finally, Angola! Exclamation mark, from Multiman Publishing. So,
Originally from Ragnar Brothers.
yes.
This is a second edition or second printing of that.
Which is from like 10 years ago already.
I think so, yeah.
So we say finally, because this is a game that we'd heard about for a long time. It's kind of one of those ones that's a little bit from before we started kind of getting into wargaming a bit more seriously, but people talk about it here and there.
Well, and I swear I heard about it all the time. Like, why haven't you guys played that yet? Or,
Yeah.
this is such an amazing game. Or, it's such an influence on the coin series, that kind of thing.
And, and like you said, it's one of Volker Runke's favorite games, I
Right.
believe.
That and Crusader Rex, I think, are the games that he talks about quite often.
And Burning Blue.
Burning Blue, yep.
But this was always something that kind of came up every so often, and finally we kind of got a hold of a copy from one of MMP's kind of year-end sales that
Yeah.
they have, a very reasonable price. Picked it up. Even that was a couple of years ago,
It was at least 2 years ago.
and so we've had it for a bit, been sat on the shelf for a bit, and it was finding an opportunity, taking it to a couple of cons, but it stayed in the bag. But finally, at WBC 2022, we were able to sit down and play this 4-player.
The way that it's intended to
Yes.
be played.
And I presume it's the only way it can be played. I mean, you could do it too.
I guess you could do it, too, where you
you're
each
just-
control the same faction.
It's twice as much game. And it's,
Yeah.
yeah. That's not half the fun of it. So that's one of the draws. So this is a 4-player kind of an area control, area move game.
And a team game.
Yes.
You win together. You don't have
And
differentiating victory points that makes, if we won the war, you won because you had more VP than me. No.
You
It's
win
a
together
team
or you
win.
lose together.
Yep. Which is cool.
And
I don't know that I played a lot
Yeah.
of games like that.
war games, almost none, I would say.
Yeah.
I think
Usually
that's
it's
quite rare.
something differentiates.
Yeah.
Like Pericles, we talked about that earlier.
Or the coin games. You kind of
yeah.
some of those natural allies, but then one person wins. This
Yeah.
one is you win or
very
you lose
team-
together. Which
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was really cool.
Well, it was cool because we were an extension of each other. Because
Yeah.
we were playing together. I was playing the UNITA faction.
And I was the FNLA.
FLLA. So we were together, and I saw your pieces as my pieces,
Yeah.
although I couldn't move them,
But they could defend
but they could defend together, and I knew where you had certain things because we talked a little bit, although you can't really, it's all open table talk. You're not really supposed to leave the room.
No, yeah, everything's across the table.
I would have liked to have left the room and gone through some of our strategies. Maybe we would have been more effective, but very interesting that I really saw you as my utter true ally, and we were winning together, and that was very unique in war games for us.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of that. So we played this with a friend of ours, Mike Heckman, and Dan Bullock, who's designed a couple other games that we love. Things like 1979 Revolution in Iran and No Motherland Without.
Yep.
And he had played this before, I believe.
A couple of times before, so he was able to kind of teach us. Although the rules, I don't think are that hard.
No, there's a couple of like little tricky bits and exceptions and things like that, but generally speaking, fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
Which once we started playing, you could mostly play off the play aid, and even then, once again, the game's 10 years old. These are the play aids.
Literally,
Like-
I think this is like sheets of the rule book copied it out, right?
It's
Double-sided.
and the play aids don't have the combat charts on
No,
them.
they do
Like
not.
it shows its age a little bit in
Yep.
some of its production values like that, but the game itself was really fun.
Really great.
And we played this. It was on the Saturday, last day of WBC for us because we left that Sunday morning, and I think we started at like 2:00.
We started setting up at 1.
Yeah.
You joined us at 2, and we broke for dinner at about 5:30, came back. We played the game for about 5.5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
And it ended, I believe it was turn 7 or turn 8.
One of those.
One of those two.
Which is
Close
the
to the
maximum
end.
of 10
10.
turns. We played a lot of it, and it
Yeah.
ended because we
We got our butts kicked.
kind of got crushed.
Yeah. Dan knew what he was doing.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The player who knows what they're doing wins the game. But
Yeah.
it was such an enjoyable experience. And the first round was kind of slow of like, figuring out the combat procedure and all that. But once we got into it, it was chugging along. And the mechanics that this game uses, one of the kind of core defining factors is you have this deck of command cards.
Your command pack, I think, is what it's called.
Well, you make a command pack
with
them,
the command cards,
and, And depending on what turn of the game is, that command pack is a different size. Early in the war, because this covers the Angolan Civil War.
Yeah,
which is a small part of it.
It's a small part. It's 75, basically July of 75 to April of 76, and it was like a 20-year Civil War,
yeah, so this is a kind of...
It's like a year.
Probably a fairly important snippet, but a snippet of that war. But, you know, in the early games, you're going to make a command pack of 4 cards. Towards the end, that's going to be like 7 cards. And that makes a huge difference. Everyone has, well...
For the most part, the same cards, but a couple different.
But some slightly different. So I didn't have any blanks. You had a couple of blanks.
I had 2 cards that forced me to pass, and I had to put these in my command pack all the time, from the get-go.
And Dan had 1. If you ever have a pass card in your commands, you have to play that into your pack.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, it simulates any number of things. Lack of organization, or just they were small, like, had less influence at this part of the war, because as it grows on, you put regular cards into it. But you have to construct your deck, your pack of cards from these, and these correspond to stacks on the board. And your stacks have column markers. So this stack is column A, that stack's column B. And it literally says column A on the marker on top of it. And if you play the column C card, you can activate column C. And the glorious part of this game is you build that stack, and that's the order that they will trigger.
You turn it over, and you're going to forget. I forgot multiple times. Oh, is my next card a pass card, or is it column A?
Or hopefully you built it in the right order.
Yep, that's another thing.
And didn't reverse it and then flip it over.
I've
done that before.
It has the age-old dilemma of, oh, I'm creating this to move in the future. 1, I don't remember what it is, and 2, my opponents are going to change their conditions.
Yeah.
Because they played cards and moved around, and all of a sudden, oh, I really wanted my C to go last, and now they're going first.
Yeah, you're playing in a reactionary way, and it's like, after the first 2 cards, everything else after that is kind of like, oh, hopefully I can do something with this, because the situation will have changed.
Well, and you just have to sometimes make the best of whatever you can do. Multiple times, things had changed enough that I had, okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to set myself up for my next turn.
Yep.
Hopefully build my deck a little better, my command pack a little better, so I can make more activations and do things that I need to do.
And it's also the gamble. Do I put in little of column E over here, because I'm preempting you have done something over there, even though there's no action, but you might go for that? But if nothing's happened, it's a waste.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff, when you pull it off, you look like a genius and it's a masterstroke. But almost never does it get pulled off and you're like, I pass. Because it's useless. Right. But so the whole command and activation system,
very fascinating,
really cool. And the player order, it's in a fixed kind of ring, but who starts is determined randomly with a die roll.
Yeah.
So you might set your pack of like, I want to do this, 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 and this, and then you roll a die, and you find out you're going 4th.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, great. I had done this as a preemptive strike, but 3 people have done something before me.
Right.
And my first card might not even be what I need it to be at that point.
What I would say about that turn track, though, is it is random, but it doesn't change all the time. You have to roll a 5 or a 6 for it to move to the next player. So the same player conceivably could be first 2-3 times in a row.
But if you roll a 1, it goes to that player. A 2 to that player. So, like, it's more likely it'll move to someone else.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I'm sorry. I misstated that.
But it's also... So it's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
You can predict kind of that it's more likely to move forward a little bit, but you can never guarantee it.
Right, because if a 5 or 6 is rolled, it just moves. If 1 was the initiative previously, it just moves to 2.
Yeah.
So you have basically a 33% chance that it's going to just kind of move sequentially. So yeah, you're kind of betting on the come. I mean, you don't know what's going on, and you're kind of like, okay, I really need to go first. I'm pretty close to going first. I have a chance, but it's never for sure.
And that's
for sure.
That's the name of this game. You're not allowed to inspect stacks. You're building this before you find out what initiative is. You can never guarantee anything in this game.
No.
Because even when it comes down to combat resolution, you might have all this cool equipment, you might have all these airstrikes, and you still roll terrible dice.
Yep.
All these things can happen.
Or your opponent has the right mix of equipment to really damage you.
Yeah, to counter all of that, and you can never quite know.
Because mines are going to take out, which I thought was odd. Mines take out tanks and vehicles.
Yeah,
they don't take out personnel.
No,
which I actually didn't like. That was the only part I don't think I didn't like, or I didn't really agree with. But then also you've got anti-tank missiles that can destroy tanks. You've got anti-air missiles. And there's just a lot of
you've
different...
got air forces.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cool things that you just don't know. Now, you can look at their stack. You can't examine the stack. But you can see,
there's 2 or 3 equipment in there.
Because they're white.
Different color.
And I like how they did that, because they didn't blend in. And we all draw from the same pool. So they have to... So you can kind of see, that guy has 3 some type of equipment. I don't really remember what he had. And that was always a risk. And sometimes I had like 3 anti-air missiles one time and totally destroyed Mike's Air Force before they could do any damage to me. And that was phenomenally awesome.
And I rolled into that one city, slaughtered all of his tanks.
Yep.
And then it was a hugely skewed battle in my favor, because that was his big power, and you just had a few infantry left.
Yeah. The other really cool thing about the battle mechanic is it is odds based, meaning you compare your combat factors with mine, and then you create the initial odds. So you're going to look on in this rules. It's not on the chart, which was odd.
These are all the charts on the back of the rulebook. That's the only chart.
Yeah, but you find where you are, and then you're going to roll dice, and it's opposed die rolls, right? So if you roll a 5 and I roll a 4, you won the die roll. You're going to move the odds column 1 in your favor.
Yes.
So you're going to move up 1 if you're the attacker, right? If you're the defender,
down 1.
You're going to move it down 1. So very unique combat resolution.
Yeah, because then that column, that's what happens.
Yeah, you just read it and it's like, lose 1/3 of your pieces, or, and that's it's just very unique.
Yeah,
you don't see that a lot. The other thing I really liked about it was it wasn't steps.
Yeah.
Right? So it didn't say, the loser loses 3 steps of units. That would have been great.
There's no steps of units in this game.
There's no steps. What you do is it'll say 1/3 of the pieces, or 2 or half, or 2, or whatever. I can't remember exactly.
It's all of those. Yeah, different ones.
You might have 5 pieces, or you may have 10 pieces, and you're going to lose 2/3 of those because you rolled really poorly. All of a sudden, your army's decimated. And the really cool thing is the pieces. There are 1 unit, like 1 strength units. There are 2 strength units, and there's 5 strength units.
And then there's some other special bits and pieces ones
that
as well.
Add some.
Can be. I had like an 8 strength one. He was one of my major ones.
I think I had something that was like a 6. But it's so you might have a 5 piece, a 6 piece, and 2 1s, and it's going to say you lose 2/3. Guess what?
Yeah, that's
you're gonna lose the little guys, but you might also have to 2/3 of 4. I know, but you might have to lose a big guy, and that's not cool. Well, but it really works well in this system,
and it incentivizes you not to make a giant death stack of your best units. Because I ended up with that, because I'd killed all my cannon fodder at 9.
Yeah.
And so I had a 5, a 5, and an 8,
there
and
you
then
go.
some equipment. And so then losing half of that is killer. That's 10 strength.
Yeah, it's
as
bad.
Opposed to if that was an 8, a 1, and a 1, losing half of that is
you just lose 2
units. I'm still 8. That's still pretty damn good.
I will note, I will say this, several of the players, I think Dan and Mike, both got away with that a lot.
Yeah.
They only had 1 or 2 little units and then 3 or 4 big units, and I felt like because I kept waiting for that to really sting them. They got away with it, but it's because they had such big combat factors, were so high on that combat results table that...
Yeah, and they had they had a lot of Air Force early on. Like, they had good stuff.
Well, and their bonuses to their DRMs were crazy.
I had a couple stacks wiped early, so I was constantly just trying to claw in from behind.
Well, and I think...
And they would get... If you stay strong, you continue to be strong in this game.
Well, I think with the UNITA faction, which is basically in the south of the map area, they don't have a lot of big units, but what they do have is they bring a lot of units on all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of little ones. What I should have done, rather than try to move 3 or 4 different stacks to fight, I should have consolidated a couple of stacks, made one really killer stack, and then gone out that way.
Because 2/3 of that is like, yeah, sure, I
lost 4
I lost
strength
4
points.
tokens,
Yeah.
but it's 4 strength points.
I made some tactical errors, I think, there.
Well, in first game, right?
First play.
I also made a huge amount of errors, but it was one of those games where, whilst we kind of got rolled a little bit and we made mistakes, it was a joy to play it.
Oh, I had a blast playing it.
And
very unique.
There are some games where we play where I don't care that I lost.
Yeah.
And whilst
I didn't care that we lost.
I don't think I cared that we lost as badly
Yeah.
as we did, because it was such an enjoyable experience and it was a learning experience, and I'm like, I desperately want to play it again.
Yes.
That's very much on the cards for me because it was just so cool. And even the little victory chits that you kind of get dealt out at the beginning of like, and
determines where your focus
here's your starting
is.
forces and your early focus and how that changes over the course of the game. Even that was very, very cool.
There's also a lot of really cool things with the terrain. And if you look at the map, I've heard some people say, "Oh, it's the ugliest map in the world." Well, I actually think it looks really unique and it looks interesting.
Well, I've seen some ugly maps in my life.
Yeah, but the different colors represent the different terrain. Basically, open, savanna, jungle, and hills, I think was the other one. And those gave you combat bonuses, or they gave the attacker an advantage. Like in open, the attacker gets an extra die because it's open, and they have a full field of fire that is unobstructed. But there's a lot of unique elements there. There's a lot of movement restrictions. Jungle, there's numbers printed in there. You have to roll to try and leave those. And if you roll under that number, you don't get to leave. You actually put a machete marker, which I thought was very cool. That adds a +1 modifier to your next roll. Unless there's a road, then you can kind of get out of it.
Yeah, the roads act as roads. They would in any game.
Very fascinating, though. I think the cities and the towns also offered some defensive values, and that ultimately was your victory points. You're trying to control the most of those so you can get more victory points.
And you can, the towns and the cities are also good because you can generally put out more equipment and more reinforcements in those areas than if it's just out in the wilds, out in the regions.
Yeah. So one other thing I want to talk about before we maybe take a look at the map, the other very interesting and unique part of this game is you have a bidding round. After all the combat.
And that's for the...
I'm trying to remember what that's called.
That's for the direct foreign aid.
It's the missiles and the tanks and the equipment you're going to get from...
No, that's the covert foreign aid.
Covert foreign aid. From South Africa, from the Soviets, and others. So what everybody does is they're going to bid on a die, and you can bid 1 to 5, basically. A 6 is no bid, which I thought was interesting.
It's a 0.
It's a 0. So people are going to set their die, and that's how many pieces of foreign aid you're going to get, right? So I chose a 4. That means I'm going to draw 4 cards that are going to give me different assets. Anti-air missiles, anti-tank missiles. But we're all comparing our numbers, right?
Yes.
So the person that bid the highest out of everybody is going to lose a victory point. Those factions are going to lose a victory point.
Give a victory point to
right,
the
that's what I
opponent.
mean.
But if they're the highest.
If they're the highest, not if they're tied.
So yeah, if we're on a team and you bid a 5 and someone on the other team bids a 5,
there's no surrender of victory points.
And you just get a ton of cool stuff.
Yeah, and I thought
so do you underbid by 1?
Yeah, just to take a victory point from them. That was something as we were playing it, because we did that 5 or 6 times, I kept thinking, how am I supposed to grok this to really take advantage? Because I needed the stuff.
And that's the problem.
Right, I needed the aid.
That's what the game does.
Yeah, it forces you.
If you're ahead, you don't need as much stuff, so you bid lower to get a victory point to stay more ahead.
Yep.
And so it's so many games have catch up mechanics.
Sure.
That's the opposite.
It is. It kind of buries you. And I think you and I, the first couple turns, we really kind of went gung-ho, 4 and 5 pieces.
Yeah. And I think early game, you can kind of get away with it maybe a little bit.
Well, you can because you need those things.
Yeah.
So later in the game, I think we were a little more cagey about it. And we're like, okay, I can only bid 3. And I think only a couple of times did we win that victory point. Not very often. Yeah.
Once.
So that was such a unique and interesting mechanic. And I think thematically what it's saying is, okay, we're in this civil war. Our 2 factions are relying on the Soviets, right, or the South Africans. So they're getting all this stuff to us, and the other side's screaming foul.
Yeah.
Hey, we're fighting amongst each other.
And
Leave these guys
the
out.
population doesn't want the outside influence.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, they're
Yeah.
masters in Beijing.
They don't want to be colonies.
Exactly.
You know, it's just a very fascinating mechanic. Like you said, it's a catch-up mechanic, but in reverse. Just a really unique part of the game. Love the combat. There's a lot to like about this game.
Yeah, there is. What I'll do is I'll show you the map and how it functions, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the board, and this is not... I've just kind of set up some pieces to show you what this is like. Normally the board is significantly more populated, and there's like a way more stuff going on. But the game, I just wanted to kind of give you a representative view of some of what this is like. So the big feature you can see is big area kind of control game. There's a few different terrain types. We've got a small terrain key over in the corner. So you have these kind of green open spaces with like clear terrain. There's these dark green jungle spaces. There's savanna. There's these red, there's like hills or mountains. And then they're obviously joined by roads. And we've got these victory point towns and cities. All the jungle spaces have a value on them. You have to roll that number or above to get out of that. So going into the jungle, easy. You can walk into a jungle. Walking out of the jungle in an organized fashion, much more difficult. The other big terrain feature that should show up decently on the camera is there is a very large kind of dark line that goes around this area, and then a small one around here. That is like a plateau. So this is all at an elevated level. So if you're ever attacking up onto the plateau, the enemy defending gets an extra die in combat. So that's generally speaking the map. You get turn track and victory track. The main thing that this game has that's very different from a lot of other games are these command cards, this command pack that you have to create. So I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit here, just so that we can kind of get a better understanding of what that means. So each faction has their own kind of set of cards, and they are not they're not symmetric, they are not equal. Not all factions are created the same in Angola. So to start with, for example, the Uniter faction has their command card. They have 2 blanks. They have a 5th column card, a column C, a column A, a column A, and a column B. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a stack of these cards, and you're going to put them in a stack, and that order that you put them in, they're going to be revealed, and you're going to activate those things in that order. So in turn 1, you're going to create a stack of 4 cards. That's not very many. And by the end of the game, you're doing 7 cards. You'll have picked up a few extras as the game progresses, but your stacks get bigger, you'll be doing more things, there'll be more units, it'll be a bit more kind of wild and crazy. The rule here is that if you have any blanks, you have to include those in your command pack. So out of the 4 cards, the Uniter faction has 2 blanks, and blank just means you pass, you do nothing. So they're going to choose 2 cards. We've got column B out, and normally you'd have column A, but for the purposes I didn't put one out, so we're going to do a command card just to kind of show you how that works. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our 2 blanks later on. No. And this is the interesting part of the game is how do you make this? What do you want to do? So we're going to go command on top, blank, B, and blank, just so that we have something interesting. And you're going to put that down, and then over the course of the game, you're just going to reveal it, and that's what you're going to execute. And there might be times that the orders you've given towards the end of the round might stop being particularly relevant. And so trying to predict what might happen or trying to build flexibility into this is very, very important. And everyone else is going to do the same thing. Again, if you have a blank, you have to put it in. And so everyone's going to be making these little stacks of cards. We're going to go B, C, blank, and 5th column. We'll just stick those like that. And so everyone makes these little stacks. Let's see, we got B and D. B, 5th column. We'll do a command and we'll do a D. Great. And then B, and so there is, there is a good planning phase. We've got A and B on the board just for the purposes of this. We will do that. They have a blank that they have to include as well. We'll just shuffle this just for funsies. Okay, so we've got yellow, green, red, and blue. And then what you're going to do is you're going to determine, so you do all of that, then you determine who's going to go first. So there really is this level of unpredictability in the game, which I very much appreciate. So you're going to roll a die, and you're going to consult the little chart over here. So we're going to roll a die. And the die says we rolled a 1, so the red player, FLPA, they're going to be the first player, they get in the first turn. And then, quite simply, as you may have imagined, you're going to reveal the first card that you have. And they had column C as their first card. So they got column C marker on top of this stack. This stack has only 1 guy in it. They were hoping to go last, and maybe something would have happened here. You don't want to move out of this victory point city, so they're going to kind of sit there, kind of a bummer. You're like, okay, well, that was not great. I'm going to pass. So then the next player, it goes to green. Green's going to flip their card. They've got column D. Column D's over here. Are they going to go and move out and do an attack? Are they going to move and try to take something? So they're going to travel down the road. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, and we'll drive in here to try and do an attack on this city. And then you resolve the attack. Now, attacks in this game, there's a lot of steps to it because there can be lots of different equipment and special factors that go into them. And so they've got the play aid, which is, leaves a lot to be desired, frankly. But the sequence of a combat is on here, and generally speaking, that's pretty helpful. So if you have immediately 6-to-1 odds, because this is a kind of an odds-based game, you just steamroll them. We only have 2, they have 1, so that's not the case. Then we would commit and reveal any air groups. So if you happen to have an air group, you say, oh, I'm going to commit my air groups, and the red don't have any available because they haven't got them yet. And so I reveal an air group because only one of us has air groups. We don't do any air-to-air combat. If they had any anti-air missiles, they would reveal those. They don't. So there's no option to intercept those. And so then we resolve. These guys just do airstrikes. They've got 2 little pips on them, so we rolled 2 dice. And on a 6, they will kill this unit. On a 4 or a 5, they will suppress the unit. We rolled 4s, so they become suppressed. But you always have kind of a base strength of 1, so it's not that impactful in this particular instance. If you had artillery, those guys would now fire. And then you would reveal any minefields, because if you have armor, which I've got a little armored tank unit, or it's an armored car, minefields, they might blow up on the minefields, and then after having done all of that, then you resolve combat. And combat in this one, is a very interesting thing. And it was one of the things I really liked about the game, because it's just a slightly, I felt like it had a different feel to it than other games. Let me pick up the rules real quick, because this is the one thing that we did complain about. Here's all the combat charts and modifiers. This is the only place that they're found in the game, is on the back of the rulebook. They're not on the play aid card. Like, that's... So, you want to print these out and photocopy this. This was our first time, so we didn't know, but that's lesson learned. We're going to rectify that, because everyone wants to have a copy of that, basically. Just for ease of reference, or at least one on each side of the table. But basically, you're going to look at this, and you're going to calculate your initial odds, and currently the starting odds are, we have 2 strength, they have the 1, and so we start at the 2 to 1. So if nothing changes, this defender is going to have to retreat out of this city, and the FNLA will have captured the city. However, what we're going to do is we're going to roll dice to see if those odds change. So the first thing that we're going to look at is we're in an open terrain. So in open terrain, you kind of look at the base die in clear terrain. The attacker rolls 2 dice, and the defender only rolls 1. And then the defender receives extra die if they're defending in a town or a city. They are, so they get an extra die. They would get an extra die if they're defending on the upside of the escarpment up onto the plateau. They are not. And if they had a minefield, they would get an extra die. So attackers got 2, defenders got 2. And I believe that is all the differences that we're making. Now, what we're going to look at is some of the units that we have. So if we look here, the FNLA have this armored car, and they have this mercenary unit that have that tiny little +1 on them in black brackets. That means that they get a +1 per combat dice bonus point. So their highest dice roll, because we're going to roll these and we're looking for the single highest die roll for each person. So the single highest die roll is going to get +2 to it for the green side. The red don't have any modifiers, so bully for them, basically. Oh, that's not true. They are going to get +1 because they have a supporting region. If you have a region adjacent to the region that's being attacked, and it's the same color, especially if you're attacking or defending, you get +1. So they're going to have +1 to their highest die roll. We're going to have +2 to our highest die roll. Whew, okay, so let's roll the green attack dice first. So we rolled a 4. That goes up to a 6 with our modifiers. They're going to roll 2 dice, adding 1 to the highest. So they rolled a 3, which goes to a 4. And so we've got 6 to 4. The net difference is a +2 to the attacker. And you consult this chart here. And so the adjustment table, we had if it was a +2 or a +3, you go up 1 level. So we were at 2 to 1, we go up 1 level to 3 to 1. And so then we do 1/3 of the defenders is eliminated, and then all the rest of the defenders retreat. And so they only have 1 guy, and it's a 1/3, and you always round up. So this guy dies, they're eliminated, and we take this city. And so Lobito is a big city. You can tell because it's kind of got the big, large image on it. And what happens is that the person who owns the Lobito chit, which at that time would have been the red player, they give control of that to the green player, and the green player puts it face down. That's important because they can't recruit guys there this turn. But in addition to that, the red player gives the green player 2 of their victory markers. And that's what you're trying to do in this game. You're trying to capture cities away from your opponents and rake in all of their victory chits and accumulate those, because at the end of the round, once everyone's done doing everything, you're going to look at the victory markers, and depending on how many you've got, you're going to move up that many spaces on this, and depending on what turn it is, you might be able to win with that amount of victory markers that you have. So it's a really, really neat game from that standpoint of how it works, but you'll find because the game's so fluid, like, there's a chance that I might lose Lobito, and I might have to give it back and then give them, the red player, 2 of my green victory markers. And you'll be exchanging these all throughout the game, and then it's kind of at the end, we're able to do enough this round to have got like a net gain, basically. It's really neat, but that's basically what happens there. You kind of stack everything back up, and then we go to the yellow player, and the yellow player reveals their card, and they have column A, and so they're going to say, well, I'm going on the offensive, because I don't think these guys are going to get out of the jungle, so I can afford to leave this slightly unprotected. It's a gamble, and we're going to move in here, and try to take this big city right here, which is worth lots of victory points. And we're doing that because yellow and red play on the same team, and the red player just lost the big victory point city while we're trying to make up the difference. We are playing as a team. There's no, oh, the yellow player wins out of the winning team. It's you win as a team, so you got to help each other out. Now, in this combat, again, you're going to reveal all your assets. Ooh, here we've got some very strong units. We've got some kind of 1 guys, we've got a 5-level brigade, and then we have a tank unit as well. But then we're going to reveal, and this is the part of the game that I think is very interesting and I really like, is you don't reveal your assets yet. So the blue player had a bunch of assets at the bottom of their stack, and you can't inspect stacks, but you can kind of see, hey, there's a bunch of assets at the bottom because they're a slightly different color. We've got, so the initial starting odds is 5, 6, 7, 8 to 3. That's not 6 to 1, so there's no kind of overrun auto victory. And then what we do is we're going to commit air groups. Well, the blue player doesn't have any, the yellow player does, so we're going to secretly kind of hide, and they say, yeah, you know what, we're going to commit, because there's a lot of power in doing some unopposed airstrikes. Cool. So they're going to resolve some airstrikes here. There's no air-to-air combat. However, this is the point at which we're going to reveal, haha, we have some anti-aircraft missiles. And you don't reveal it. If they hadn't committed any air groups, you wouldn't need to reveal the AA missiles, because you don't use them, so they don't know you have them. And so what's going to happen is we're going to roll anti-aircraft missiles prior to the airstrikes. So you get to try to shoot the planes down before they shoot you. And so we're going to roll 2d6. On a 6, we destroy. On a 4 or 5, we suppress. So we're going to roll them. We rolled a 4. That's going to suppress the air group. They go to this little box. They don't commit their airstrikes. This anti-air missiles is removed. It was a one-shot. It's done with. But that's how you're going to do that. If we had both revealed air groups, we would resolve air-to-air combat, shooting at each other in a very similar way. I'm going to shoot these dice. I suppress you. You're going to shoot your dice. Oh, good gracious! You're going to kill me. That air group's going to go back to the kind of the tray, not to this box where you're going to get them back next turn. But revealing all these different assets and things like that. So then, if there was artillery, we'd shoot artillery at each other. Now we've got minefields. So this tank has to go over the minefield that we had at the bottom of our stack, and we had to have it in the deployed minefields, not in the mindset. You can carry this around, but as soon as you drop it and flip it into a minefield, it's static, and if you ever leave it, it goes away. So we're going to roll a die, and on a 1, we're going to blow this tank up off the map. I did not do it. Pesh, basically. That's a shame. But, so, that might not seem very strong, but the minefield also gives the defender an extra die in combat. So it does both those things. There are anti-tank missiles. You can get your little kind of Milan systems going. Those act just like the AA missiles, where you roll 2, and on a 6 you destroy, on a 4 and a 5 you suppress armor units. So if you get a bunch of anti-tank missiles and you can roll into an armor stack, you can just wipe them, and it's awesome. It's very cool. But at this point, we're going to do this combat. So currently we're at 8 to 3 odds, which rounds up to 2 to 1. And we're gonna roll the old combat. Now, because we're in hills, the attacker only gets 1 die, and the defender gets 2. The defender also gets a die because we're in a city, and we also get a die because we have a minefield. And remember, this little +1 on the tank means that they're going to roll 1 die +1. we're going to roll 4 die. We don't have any of those cool pluses, so we're just going to roll 4 straight die. So the attacker's going to roll their die, and they rolled a 6, plus 1 is a 7. Of course they did. So I got my 4 dice, and I rolled, what did I get? I rolled a 5. So 7 to 5, the difference is plus 2. So they go, once again, from a 2 to 1, they go up 1 step to a 3 to 1. And we're going to lose a third of our units, rounded up, and then the rest of them are going to retreat. Now, when we've got 4 units, a third, rounded up, is 2. And so all of a sudden you're like, great, I got to lose half my guys, basically. So we're going to lose one of these guys, and then we're going to take out the engineer. The engineer doesn't have any combat strength, but engineers counter enemy minefields. They can, if they're not doing that, they can negate the bonus die from a city. They're kind of a utility pick. So those guys are going to get gone. And then the rest of us have to retreat out of this city. The minefield goes away. And then these guys roll into this area. And then, once again, the blue player now gives the Mariposa, or Nova Lisboa, sorry. They're going to give them the Nova Lisboa chit, and they're going to give them 2 blue victory chits. And then we're going to keep going. Then we go over to the blue turn. And the blue player reveals their little card, and they said, ooh, I revealed a command card because I wanted to use these guys. So I can redeploy a column marker to another force, or swap column markers between 2 forces that haven't already moved. So I'm going to move him over here, and then we keep going. You go round and round doing this. So my next card for the blue team is going to be a blank. They're going to have to pass. And then the next time they activate, it's going to be column B. This column we couldn't have moved at the beginning of the phase can now move. They can say, oh, I'm going to run away, because they're kind of cornered. And so they're going to go 1, 2, and link up with these guys. You can't stack them on top of each other until the beginning of next round. Those stacks can combine, and then their last one's going to be a pass. But you're going to go around the horn doing this over and over again, exchanging these victory points, trying to spread out, trying to get defensive terrain. You have to be aggressive. You're trying to also get extra guys for support. That way, even if you're rolling 1 die, you're going to have a lot of bonuses to it, so your odds are never going to be too swingy. Because if you get into some real bad stacks, you can have stacks, huge stacks that are just wiped off the board, and it's brutal. But basically, at the end of all of that, you're going to adjudicate, let's say, we had, this many victory markers, or you had this many. So if one set of allies had 15 victory markers, and I think there's only 20. I think there's 20. Everyone starts with 5. Then they're going to go up 1, 2, 3 spaces on this track. And then what you're looking for is, depending on what turn it is, you might be able to win with that amount of victory points that you have. But if not, you have to kind of keep on going. And so the next turn, you might have a whole bunch. That means it's easier to lose them because you can't hold on to as much. So the next turn, the other team might have taken those from you, and it's this back and forth of trying to swing. And the other big difference is if you're in a big losing position, you then, you've lost a bunch of stuff, you then get a bunch of aid, and you have a bunch of kind of special markers that you can get. Some of them are extremely strong units. For example, do I have one here? The FNLA have this 8 strength guy. If he's on his own, that's very brittle because, he's going to die, but 8 strength on 1 counter is very strong if he's with a stack of units. You might have really strong 4 pip air groups. So 1 air group's going to shoot 4 dice. That's very strong. The MPLA have a bunch of huge tanks and mercenaries that have 5 strength plus a little +3 on the die roll, things like that. You're going to get all this extra stuff. And then on top of that, you get to one of the most fun parts of the game, and that's the covert aid. So once you've done all of this, and you've kind of got your catch-up mechanic aid that's going on, all the players are going to take a die, and they're going to place a bid for how much kind of covert foreign aid that they're going to get. And this is really important because you're going to bid anywhere from 0, a 6 is a 0, you just use dice, 0 to 5, and that's how many cards you're going to get. That's how many items of cool foreign aid you're going to get, which is to be very strong. However, if one team, so again, we're playing as a team, if one team has the highest single die out of everyone, they give the other team a victory point. So we're trying to work together to maybe get lots, but not have the most. So if I put a 5 and I put a 4, and then the other two opponents both choose 4, it doesn't matter because he put a 5, our team had the single highest bid, which means the opposing team gets a victory point. And it's just to do with public opinion not liking the outside influence, basically. But regardless of all that, you give them a victory point, but you still, I'm going to get 5 cards, you're going to get 4, and each of these other 2 players are going to get 4. So between this team, they got 8, and we got 9. That's not much of a difference, but they did gain a victory point. So how you bid and trying to be canny about it, if you're in a good position, well, I don't need as much aid, so we can bid low. And the other team are like, well, we know they're going to go low because they don't need it, and they're trying to gain that victory point. So we might have to go low as well to not give them a greater lead. Very interesting things that go on. And then you're going to divvy out these 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say you get 5 of these. And depending on which team you're on, so if you're on this bottom team, if it's turns 1 through 6, you get an air group. That's great. You get an air group out of the box. You're also going to get, on turns 1 through 2, 2 AA missiles. If it's any turn later than that, you get 3. You might get receive 1 unit of mercenaries, so you get a unit of your faction's mercenaries. You might get another air group. I didn't get any air groups this whole game, it sucked. Or you might get an armored car unit. So you're going to get all of that stuff, and then you just stick them in your reinforcements where you're allowed to. And so that's where you're picking up all of these assets or extra units, and the beginning of the game, it's just kind of your basic units for the first couple turns, but it escalates so quickly with all the equipment and the extra bonus stuff that the game really, really has a great story and changes over the course of it. It gets much more lethal, much more dangerous, and it's just awesome going around. And then all of a sudden, you've been doing a bunch of stuff, and then at the end of your stack of cards, you're like, ah, crap. I had a card that doesn't really do anything useful, and passing feels real bad in this game because there's always so much to do, and having wasted a card just does not feel good. But there's so much in this game. It is glorious, but that's a lot. I hope that gives you a gauge kind of what the game is like. I can't tell you how swirling and moving everything is and how unpredictable the game is, but that's a basic look at how it works, and what we'll do is to wrap up with a few final thoughts.
I told you the map was unique and interesting looking, right?
Yeah.
I think it's great. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is absolutely a thing of beauty. But it's unique. You just don't see colors like this that often.
Yeah,
Not in war games.
It's very garish.
It is very garish. But I think it's representative of, in some ways, that part of, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's just a hodgepodge, so...
I've seen a lot of worse maps, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was a look at how the game works. This was... I don't know. I've been looking forward to it for a while. Mm-hmm. And it was just glorious to actually get it done.
Yeah.
And I also enjoyed playing with someone who had played it a few times before.
I think that was an advantage.
Just because they were able to iron out some of the questions that we had. Mm-hmm. And they were at least familiar with the sequence of things and what to do and what not to do. So that was also a huge boon. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a very enjoyable game and genuinely quite different from a lot of other games that we've ever played.
I don't think there's many war games that are like this, frankly. Just very unique.
Yeah, so I think the only other one that's kind of like this is a future one that's coming, Crown and Crescents, that's built off of this core system.
Yep.
But
changes it a little bit.
Even that's quite different. But yeah. The hodgepodge of all the different parts in this make for a very unique experience, and one that was at times very intense, one at times very frustrating, and and it was just so enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was really cool to play it and to do it.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because, like you said, Dan knew the game. The other three of us really we were just swimming in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
Trying to get our legs, trying to understand what's going on. And I really enjoyed that because you could see what Dan was doing. And I started thinking, oh, okay, I kind of see what's going on.
Next time we play, I'll do that.
Yeah. He was very good about consolidating his stuff up north, getting them all assembled, and then moving 3 good stacks into positions to really knock us out.
And
really, we were on the ropes and he knocked us out.
He was spreading out his stuff, so we had lots of those non-column stacks just for support of bits and pieces. That were just, I had a big old stack, but it was impossible to overcome all of his modifiers.
Yeah.
And so I had huge numbers, but it was always ever 1-to-1, which was like...
Yeah, and that's the other thing. There is a lot of asymmetry here.
Oh, a significant amount.
Each of the factions is a little bit different. Like we already talked about, I had in my command pack 2 pass cards,
but the composition of your forces is also
very different. The other thing that's interesting about UNITA is all my reinforcements, for the most part, come in Southwest Africa. So that's literally the space movement values that you can get. It's 2 turns away from getting into the combat.
Yeah.
Which is unique, right? It's interesting and it's set up that way.
You're making this long, almost chain of guys coming in.
And that's why I was talking about I probably needed to consolidate them a little bit before I banged my head against the wall. I should have consolidated 2 stacks and I would have made a little bit more of an impact on. I also like this game because there is some element of maneuver. Right,
quite a significant amount.
You're looking for that weakness, that chink in the armor of your opponent. You're looking for that way to kind of move a stack around and then follow up with some other coup de grace or something. I enjoyed that. You really had to focus on looking at where all the stacks were.
Yeah,
knowing kind of what their movement values can be. And you got to keep that in mind. So it became fun. It was like, okay, I'm moving here, so I want to stop him from moving down here. You're moving here to stop him from there, and then we were trying to, pinch him in the middle, and they were doing the same thing. And it was very cool, very maneuver oriented, I would say.
And I think the other thing that we hadn't talked about earlier is with regards to the turn order. Mm-hmm. It's one side from your faction goes, then one side from theirs.
Yeah, that's
and then
the way.
One side from yours, then one side from theirs. So you alternate between the factions, and so you might knock something out, but you have to. They get a chance to react to that if they desperately need to before you can exploit it.
So you're never going like our factions back to back so we can bury somebody.
Yeah, it's really hard to do that. Or what I say is, if you have good planning, it's really easy to avoid that kind of a thing.
Right.
Of getting exploited. And they did a really good job of having lots of backup stacks where I'd punch into the city, knock them out, and there would always be a counter punch. And it's like,
Yeah.
That was a really neat aspect of the team play.
The other thing, I think the map really creates a focus here on the center.
Yeah.
You've got kind of 4 big cities in the middle, and all the roads converge there, right?
And there's a lot of defensible terrain on top of those as well.
So that was cool. It kind of really, in my opinion, forced the action here. You in the north, and your faction was the
FNLA.
Sorry. You had to take out Kabinda.
Yes.
So that you could kind of then sweep south.
Yeah.
Had that gone one more turn sooner,
we would have been in much better shape.
We would have been in a little better shape.
It's very slow going. It's almost just a little mini game up in Zaire that you've got to play.
Pretty interesting.
And it's like a timer almost. If you can get it done very quickly, then this huge FLNA force just churns down from the north.
Yeah.
And you got some real fun stuff going on there. But if the yellow faction, I don't know what they were called, the MPLA.
Yeah.
Those guys, if they can hold it off and delay it, because they're going to die, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
If they can hold off as long as possible, then there's just not enough force presence down on the main board to kind of hold off the communist sides. Which it was very, very interesting.
The other thing about this is with those randomly drawn initial setup cities.
Yeah.
Each game's going to be different, right? Sometimes you're going to be grouped together within 3 or 4 kind of areas of each other, and then sometimes you're going to be all over the map. And that's going to create a very unique and different setup and a different set of challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
Each game you play this, not to mention, you got 4 completely unique asymmetric factions.
Playing a different faction in this game, it's like playing a
gonna be
different faction
different.
in a coin game.
Yeah.
You got to learn how they work.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more subtle than some of those other games, but you got to figure that out. Yeah, I enjoyed the variable kind of setup, victory points that you have, but at the same time, you're then going to consolidate your forces, and I think there'll always be that focus in this part. So it's this, it's a slightly different early game, and you get to this mid game and late game.
I think ultimately, in the end, it's going to kind of
come
to be the same thing, but you're going to start in different areas.
And so the story will have some similarities to it, but it will feel quite different in the course of as you kind of retell that. I think that's really, really neat.
Yeah, it's not a quick playing game.
No.
By any means. I think once you've played it, you can probably play this in 3 to 4 hours. We took 5 or 6 just to get through 7 or 8 turns.
Yeah, but if we set this up now with those same players and played it again, it would go at a much better clip, yep.
But I do think the game feels faster moving than it actually is. I felt like things were changing so quickly.
Oh, yeah. No, yes.
And I was being thrown into the kind of the fiery furnace almost every turn that it kept me on the edge of my seat and required me to really think about, okay, what am I going to do this turn?
Yeah.
What do I want to do with the actions I have left, and how do I want to counter what's just been done to me? That's very fascinating. A lot of times we play games where you've got a static line and you're kind of just pounding each other until somebody or somewhere breaks.
And the breakthrough is usually very slow, or you can see it coming.
Here, this can happen lightning fast.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's going to be a slow burn because players are playing a little cagily.
But if you've got a slow burn over here, you can go and piss around over here, right? Or if something breaks over here, you're like, ooh, suddenly dogpileless.
Yeah.
Your plans can change on a dime, but your command pack can't.
Yeah.
And so figuring out what you're trying to do with your command pack and either just committing hard to that or trying to make it so you could be a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Such an interesting part.
Well, and your most important cards in your command pack are your column activations.
Yeah.
As the UNITA, I had 4 different columns, A, B, C, and D. I had multiple copies of A, B, and C, but only 1 of D. So what that told me was I don't want to create, I really want to focus on 2 columns and probably have 2 activations for each one of those columns. But I didn't do that a whole lot of the game because I had too many stacks out.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I really find that fascinating. The other concept is these 5th column cards. So they're not actual columns with markers. They're 1 or 2 guys kind of spread out all over the map. You play that 5th column and you're going to be able to move a force not in a column. You can move a couple guys in to reinforce a city.
Yes.
Or I saw Volko commenting on some of our games. He's like, well, you need to garrison that city. While I agree with that, I was garrisoning it with 1 guy.
Yeah.
And that 1 combat strength was not going to make a difference. But I think his point was, don't leave cities wide open for people just to walk into.
Yeah.
The other cool thing about that equipment is there were mines. The mines, I thought, while they rolled really low, they only hit on 1s, it was a unique thing that was kind of like, oh, haha, you just walked into a minefield. And no, I've got 3 of them, by the way. And very cool. I just think those elements are cool. There's also the command cards where you can swap.
That was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Is you can use, I used column A, and column A moves and does its thing.
And they burn themselves out.
And then you play a command card to pick up the column A marker and put it on a column that hasn't moved.
Yep.
And then guess what? My next card is my other column A marker.
Yep.
And then this, which is now column A, goes and does another thing.
I did that to great effect one time, and I thought, boy, I should have been doing that a little bit more.
Well, you've only got 1 of them, and then and that takes up, instead of moving another column, that's one of
takes
your
up a card. Yep. But I found, okay, put the 2 A's in there, put that in there, and then I had
it gives you options.
Some options.
Because if nothing happens, you can always just pass on that command and then
exactly.
remove this other A stack again. And the options are very important in this game.
Well, the other part, a column marker to another force or swap column markers between forces. Yeah. So anyway, very cool that command pack, I think, was the best part for me. I just thought it was really unique.
It's a very, very cool engine for sure.
Yeah. Love the combat system. Love the movement system. Love the turn order concept. The bidding for the foreign aid, very cool. There's a lot to like here. And the only other comment I wanted to make about the game is we hear a lot of times, this is Volko Ruhnke's favorite game, or one of his favorites.
Yeah, one of, sure.
It is, in my mind, it was the spark that ignited the concept for the coin series. Wouldn't you agree with that?
That is vague enough where I'll agree with you on that.
Okay,
yes.
I know we had an argument about this.
Yes.
This is a coin series style game with some differences. It's not totally, doesn't totally, match up, but you can see a lot of the influence from the initiative or turn track to the way these cards work and the different factions.
Yeah, the
you can see
interplay
where it
between
came from.
the factions and the multiple players.
Yeah.
Is very easy to see there.
Yeah.
Even the look and the feel of the game at times can be that way as well.
So I'm glad that Volko played this a lot and then was able to formulate the coin series from it, because it's one of my favorite series, and we enjoy it. I play it every chance I can.
Yeah.
So very unique, very cool game. Really enjoyed this.
Yes.
So glad we bought it.
Yes, this
couple
is
years ago.
a wonderful game. And I don't want to speak ill of the game because it's great, but it is regularly on MMP's seasonal sale, so you should get it.
And
it's well worth the price.
I'm not sure. People just don't know about it. Well, the production value's not high. Let's be honest.
It shows its age in the product that it is. This was printed in 2011. I think war games have come a long way since then.
The graphic design, I actually really like the graphic design on the backs of the cards.
Totally fine with the cards. Totally fine with that. The play aids are a bit sad, worse for wear.
And I meant to go on BGG and see if someone had made custom. I still haven't gone on there.
I guarantee that there is.
Yeah.
Because these are the combat charts.
Yeah.
There's literally not a single chart on the play aid, which is like, why are we even have play aids?
Yeah, I'm not really sure why.
The play aids were only helpful for reinforcement placement and that was all I used them for.
And even the play aid, this should be the UNITA play aid because it's blue, right? My faction was blue, yet it lists everything for everybody, and I'm okay with that. Highlight mine.
Yeah.
To make it easy.
It was a different time in 2011.
I know. Well,
we've come a long way since then.
We all play games to get through them, learn, and come to a conclusion. A good player aid just helps that happen.
I agree.
More effectively.
But yeah, I'm sure someone's got really nice, good, up-to-date plays on BGG. Print those kinds of things out, and it'll just help. Just that one extra easier step, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So Angola from MMP. Wonderful 4-player team game.
Love it.
An experience unlike, frankly, any others that I've had in wargaming. So check it out if that's something you're interested in, and appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.